Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. So hello, what I'm trying to do here is show you some fixed blade knives from around the world. But it's more than that this knife happens to be made in some other country than the United States, even though one of these knives is actually made in the United States. It's more that this knife has somewhat come to represent the country that it came from. So there's some kind of cultural significance to the knife and the country where it's coming from. I guess that is the best way to describe this. Now, I don't have nearly as many of these kind of knives as I wish I did, but I do have a few, and so I thought what I would do is share them with you. And I'm not going to go into great detail with them because I think each knife deserves its own video discussing its cultural significance. But what I thought I would do is show them real quickly and see what you think, and let me know if you think you'd like to hear more about any particular one of these knives. Okay, and so with that said, let's get started with a fixed blade knife from the United States that kind of represents the U.S., at least in many people's minds, and that would be the Bowie knife. And it's an interesting story behind the Bowie knife. The original one looks nothing like this, most likely, and this is more or less patterned off of Bowie knives that were coming out of Sheffield, England. But this is the one that most people think of these days, and it in itself it has a history behind it. This particular one is by Baron's son. Camillus also made one like this. This is actually patterned off of the Western 49 Bowie, and it's often called the Western Bowie. And it even predates Western making these. I think they were made by Collins, and they were actually considered a machete at one time. So it's kind of an interesting story behind the Western Bowie, but a lot of people, you think United States and you think Bowie knife. There are other knives I think that you could also think of, but for the U.S. we'll represent with the Bowie knife here, the Western Bowie. In the case of this one, it's the Baron's Son Gold Rush Bowie with its dangler sheath, nice leather sheath. So that will take care of the United States, the Western style Bowie. Next up, I will go with the kukri. Now, a lot of people will say India, but actually this is out of Nepal, and I think it represents Nepal better than it does India. There are numerous knives out of India that you could also use to represent India, but the kukri, mainly because of the Gurkha soldiers of England, is really, the blade that defines Nepal. And this particular one is a farmer's kukri. I have done a video on this before and talked in more detail about the kukri in that video. And this is a cattle hide and basically Studebaker spring steel with a wood handle, and this is a full tang version of a kukri. But pretty impressive knife. This is a big one, but we will use this to represent Nepal, the kukri. Now, I went into a lot of detail on these little knives a long time ago. This is a knicker knife out of Germany. It's the little knicker, that's what it's called, and it's a little German hunting knife that is used to basically dispatch wounded animals. That's what nicking is referring to. I have a variety of these knives. This is the one this is my Linder Pro Knicker with the little wiener dog on the end there. This is one of my favorites. But this one represents Germany, and more specifically Bavaria. I guess you could also use this one to represent Austria as well. But the knicker knife is a knife that a lot of people, you see it and you associate it with Germany. This one was definitely made in Germany, so that's pretty cool. And by the way, my kukri was made in Nepal, and my buoy was made in the United States. Okay, next up is my horsehead puko out of Finland. And if you've been a subscriber to the channel, you probably saw this knife a couple years ago. Well, the puko is very much a knife that you think of when you think of Scandinavia or Finland. Finland is not Scandinavia, but it is often associated with Scandinavia. But this particular one is a horsehead puko out of Finland. And well, it's just a classic little design. Now, often these were also made for the tourist trade, but they are a usable knife that you have here. And they came in actual two sizes. This is the larger one, this is the 8-inch one. And this was usually referred to as the men's puko. The smaller one is known as the ladies' puko, and it's basically for any kind of chore that they needed to use. So it's just a little fixed blade knife that was carried and used quite often in Finland. So the horsehead puko. Okay, from a historic perspective, this knife has not been around too long. This is the Groman Canada belt knife, and I'm going to use this one to represent Canada. And it's just a little skinner, a little bird and trout knife, but it's also just a very useful utility knife, and numerous companies have since copied it. But it is often, even when made by other companies, referred to as the Canada belt knife. And you see clearly stamped here, Canada and Groman. But to me, this knife, when I see this knife, I think of Canada. And I'm sure a lot of other people do as well, regardless of who makes it and everything. So if you're going to get one, you just as well get the original by Groman and have a proper Canada belt knife. And like I said, it might not have the history of like a knicker or a Finnish puko, but you see this knife and you think Canada. So that's why I grabbed it, and this is the knife that represents Canada in my knife collection, the Canada belt knife. Okay, that brings us to another knife that is really made for the tourist trade, but there is some historical significance behind it, and that is right here. This is an eagle head pommel knife out of Mexico. Often referred to as like a Oaxaca buoy, because most of them are made in the city of Oaxaca in Mexico. Many of them will be adorned with like writing on the blades and stuff. But it's basically an interesting shaped buoy blade, about 8 inches long. They come in all sorts of sizes. And then you have the eagle head pommel on the end of the knife, and often horn is used for the inserts on the forged handle, which is actually a cast handle, I should say. So you've got a cast handle, a blade that is pinned in there. I'm not sure, it's usually they say it's a hand forged blade. I'm not sure. It's these are often made for the tourist trade, but they can get kind of expensive, and they are based off of a traditional Mexican buoy knife, and goes back quite a way. And well, like I said, they're made for the tourist trade these days, and this is what this one here is. So it's got Mexico written all over it, but still, it is an interesting knife, and I think it represents Mexico quite well. The Oaxaca buoy knives, the eagle head pommel Oaxaca buoy knives. And finally, we have the knife that was given to me by Eric over there at Slick Slicers, and that is the Ski and Do, which is a little hidden knife used in Scotland. Now you can find all sorts of these online, obviously, most of them being made in China or Pakistan these days. I saw numerous ones that were made in Sheffield, England, and this was made for Eric, and Eric was nice enough to give it to me, so that's even more important. I will be doing a more, go into more of the, I suppose it would be more of the lore of this knife, the LORE, than the true history of the knife, because this little knife is steeped in legend, like so many of the knives that represent nations. They are steeped in legend, or steeped in lore. They have there's a lot of legend involved. There's a lot of history also in there, and it's all intertangled together. And you will have different people say different things about those knives. You know, this is true, this isn't true, and then a week later you'll have the same person say, well, maybe that was true and this wasn't true. So, and there is definitely a lot going on with the ski and do when you get to that, to the history behind this knife. Was it a hunting knife? Was it the knife of a cut purse? Was it just a kitchen utensil? Or was it all three? The real answer is, yeah, it was all three, depending on who was using it and who was carrying it, and all sorts of other things about it. But the ski and do has a rich, long history, as opposed to the Canada belt knife, which has a short history, more verifiable, but still just as important, and a knife that represents Canada well, a knife that represents Scotland well, a knife that represents Nepal well, a knife that some people would say represents America well. Others would say, yeah, I don't know. And, well, the other ones we just looked at, the little knickers from Germany, the horsehead puko, really fantastic little knife, and finally the Mexican buoy. So anyway, there's my short look at 7 knives of historical nature from around the world and the countries they're associated with. Hope you enjoyed it. I will probably do something a little more detailed on all of these knives if I haven't already, and I might show you some other knives that I got from around the world also, some other fixed blades from around the world that just happen to be from a different country, you know, like a Polish bayonet, an Austrian knife, so on and so forth. Anyway, for right now, we'll leave you with that. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time.